Today I brought you an athar. Insha'Allah ta'ala we will discuss in details that how this athar proves or refute or destroy the belief of 𝗗𝗲𝗯𝘂 or 𝗗𝗲𝗯𝘂 or 𝗗𝗲𝗗𝗲𝗃.
It's quite the opposite. What will be shown today is how weak and feeble your arguments are.
The athar, this is how we start with. This can be found in 𝗗𝗲𝗯𝘂 𝗗𝗲𝗯𝘂.
So the first error you make is you say 𝗗𝗲𝗯𝘂, but it's actually 𝗗𝗲𝗯𝘂. Let's continue.
When you go to the Surah Al-Zumar, started by athar number 30,282, it goes قال حدثنا معاذ ابن هشام قال حدثني أبي عن قتادة قال حدثنا النضر ابن أنس عن ربيعة الجرشية قال. يعني quote the ayah of the Quran when it says والأرض جميعا قبضته يوم القيامة والسماوات مطويات بيمينه. Then he says ويده الأخرى خلو ليس فيها شيء. ليس فيها شيء. So basically he says that Mu'adh ibn Hisham narrate to us saying, my father narrate to me from Qatada, who said An-Nadr ibn Anas narrate to us from Rabi'a al-Jurashiyya, who say regarding the verse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The verse says, and the earth entirely will be within his grip on the day of resurrection, and the heaven will be folded in his right hand. Then the author added, he says, and his other hand is free, empty, there is nothing in it. Brothers and sisters, conclusion is what? Is this narration specifically stating the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the other hand is empty. وَيَدَهُ الْأُخْرَى خِلْوٌ, his other hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is empty. Directly challenges the metaphorical interpretation of the 𝗗𝗲𝗯𝘂 or 𝗗𝗲𝗃 or 𝗗𝗲𝗃. How can they explain an empty power? Because there are a ta'wil where the 𝗗𝗲𝗯𝗂 bro, they said is a power, or 𝗗𝗲𝗃, they said this is the power. How can they explain an empty power if hand merely means power or ability? This athar logically refutes such ta'wil, as emptiness can only be attributed to a real hand, not a mere concept.
This narration has many errors with it, and there's many ways we can refute this, but let's go through some of the ways how we will completely dismantle this objection. Ibn Jawzi rahmatullah alayhi says, as for the version mentioning the left hand, it is totally weak. It has been soundly established about the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he said, and both of his hands are a blessed right hand. So this weakens the mention of the left hand. This is what Ibn Jawzi rahmatullah alayhi mentions. Another thing is what they're trying to do is they're taking these words in literally instead of finding an appropriate meaning which is within the language that is suitable. They actually are taking a literal meaning which is unsuitable. They believe that these are literal hands, and within the language we know what that means, and we also know that this will create an image within the people's minds regarding Allah, which we shouldn't even have an image in our mind in regards to Allah. So these people will make an invalid inference from the text, and they would present it to you as though it's factual. And this is how Decepticons act. These people are deceptive, very deceptive in the way they use the narrations and they present it to the people. So the next thing I want to highlight is that even if hypothetically the narration was authentic and it was reliable and we can trust it, even then there's two approaches that Ahl Sunnah take in regards to such mutashabihat texts. So we could either consign the meaning to Allah, which is tafweed, or number two, we do ta'wil. And on the screen you will see Al-Qutaybi. He says during the discussion of this hadith, he says he merely meant by that to express the meaning of completion and perfection. So when Allah is mentioning right hand, or wherever in the Quran Sunnah is mentioned right hand, that's the understanding behind the completion and perfection. Since the left side of all things are lesser than their right sides in strength, force and perfection. So this would be the understanding when it talks about there's nothing in the left hand. So that's only if we take it as reliable, but it's not reliable to begin with. So they have to jump through the first hurdle, which is it's not reliable. Then when you want to come to the second hurdle, they still have another wall to go through. So we have walls of reinforcement in regards to how we deal with such absurd conclusions that they reach. And Al-Qutaybi, he follows on, he says, since the left side of all things is lesser than the right side to strength, force and perfection, the Arabs used to love to do things with their right hands, and they despise what they did with their left hands due to perfection found in the right hand and the imperfection found in the left hand. It's possible that it means giving with both hands together, since the right hand is the one that gives. So if both hands are right hands, giving happens with both of them. Then it says, Mirar adopted this view when he said, and ruling over 𝗗𝗲𝗯𝘂 is one who is profoundly wise, a young man. Both of his hands are a right hand.
Regarding the sanad, where we can look into, it says in the footnote, it says that this particular athar is Hasan, where it goes, معاذ ibn هشام ibn أبي عبد الله الدستوائي من رجال الصحيحين من رجال الصحيحين. قال حافظ رحمه الله تعالى بالتقريب صدوق رب ما وهم. What does that mean? He says that this narration is Hasan. Abdullah al-Dastuwai is among the narrators of the two Sahih by Imam al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. So Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, al-Hafiz, rahimahullah ta'ala, said in a book called At-Taqrib, he is trustful, but sometimes make mistakes.
Okay, so the first thing I want to highlight is if a narrator is differed upon amongst the scholars, such a narration has sufficient reason for dismissal. So this is a principle I want to highlight. And the second thing I want to highlight is Mu'adh bin Hisham. He has been critiqued, and let's see what the scholars have said about him. So the first thing we see is, I will read our narration where he proves that he was a Qadari and he was from a heretical sect. So Al-Maymuni narrated from Ahmad, who said it was in his book from his father, sins are not from the decree of Allah. I said to him, what is your knowledge on this? He said, I saw it in his book on the authority of his father. Then he went out to Mecca for trade and sat talking to them. So Al-Hamidi said, do not listen to anything from this Qadari. The references there you can see. Imam 𝗗𝗲𝗂𝗋 has mentioned this. Yahya ibn Ma'in, rahmatullahi alayhi, he said, this individual was truthful but not on evidence. He's not hujjah. And Ibn Adi said, he has many hadith from his father, from Qatada, and he has sound hadith from other than his father. He may sometimes make mistakes in something, but I hope he is truthful. So these are some of the statements that scholars mention, that this individual, he has some sound reports, but he also has mistakes, and then he hopes that he is truthful. So are we going to have hope in when we take things in creedal matters? Is that how we're going to base our creed based on hope, and possibly it could turn out to be wrong what we believe regarding Allah? Is that the approach that we're supposed to do? So this is very strange for someone to rely on narration which is dhanni, and in creedal matters you're about to establish an attribute for Allah and the details about an attribute, and you're about to take something literal, and you're using a dhanni narration, and you're also using a narration which is susceptible and has been critiqued that this individual could be making mistakes in this regard. Anyways, Ibn Hajar rahmatullahi alayhi, he described him as truthful narrator who had some mistakes. If a truthful narrator is the only one who narrates a hadith, it is not acceptable from him unless it is substantiated by someone else. Such a narration by someone who is the only one who narrates a hadith do not establish a belief. Moreover, a tabi'i is not a form of evidence in creed. So you're supposed to provide, in creedal matters, you're supposed to be decisive evidence. And this is not a decisive evidence, not from Allah or His Messenger in a decisive way. So even the form of evidence that they're providing is not sufficient.
We know that based on this ayah, this is authentic because he's agreeing with what Allah Azza wa Jal and Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saying according to Quran and Sunnah.
So he presents a verse of the Quran, but in the verse of the Quran it doesn't mention that the left hand does not have nothing. So he do not substantiate his point. So this, yet again, I'm showing you how these guys are very deceptive. They're saying that it's mentioned in the Quran and Hadith, the same thing, so therefore it's reliable. How so? When the same thing has not been mentioned in the Quran Sunnah. Where has it mentioned that the left hand has nothing? Where does it mention this? So this is deceptive behavior, yet again. And to end with, I'll show you how deceptive they are. They, within their own group, they actually disagree whether Allah has a left hand or not. So the fact that they disagree amongst themselves, the scholars are disagreeing whether Allah has a hand or not, a left hand, and then they're presenting us, people who are not from that group, evidence as though like it's concrete, as though it's like there's no difference of opinion, as though it's a defeater to our creed. This is absurd. This is the height of deception.
فوزان يقول لا، يقول شماله هي يمين. طيب، هذا من إعانة المستفيد بشرح كتاب التوحيد للشيخ صالح الفوزان، مجلد الثاني، مؤسسة الرسالة ناشرون. يقول في الصفحة 461 كما ترون: شرح الطحاوية لصالح بن عبد العزيز آل الشيخ. آل الشيخ يعني آل من آل ابن عبد الوهاب يعني. طيب، في هنا دار المودة الجزء الثاني صفحة 1054. ماذا يقول؟ يسأل عن وصف اليمين والشمال، يقول: هذا جاء في حديث رواه مسلم أنه يمين وشمال، وأثبته طائفة من أهل العلم، والصواب عندي عدم إثبات صفات الشمال لله، أو عدم إثبات صفة الشمال لله تعالى. الشيخ الألباني كما قلنا له قولان كما يبدو. أولا يقول شماله تبارك وتعالى هي يمين، وهي أيضا شمال. لاحظ الألباني ماذا يقول: أنا لا أحب أن أثبت لله اليد الشمال إلا بالنص الصحيح. هذا خلاصة الكلام.